between, for example, our mission here in the Vatican. Like I told you, I mean, we're working together on humanitarian issues. We're focused on other issues as well. The president's perspective is clear. He thinks that Iran is a threat and it needs to be addressed. And that position remains unchanged. And I think we're capable of having that position and expressing that position clearly, and also working cooperatively, and as we have for centuries, as we have for decades, with the Vatican and with the Catholic Church, who has a global presence.
Did you explicitly ask the Pope to stop his criticism of the Iran war?
I'm not going to discuss with the Vatican and with the Catholic Church, who has a global presence.
Did you explicitly ask the Pope to stop his criticism of the Iran war?
I'm not going to discuss what I talk about the Pope, but I'm not going to ask him. That's not the purpose of I told you guys before I even came here. And that is that we have a very strong relationship with the Vatican. We work with them on a lot of things around the world. This was a trip that had been planned even before all of these things had happened. So why just as an example, why would I not want to hear the perspectives of the most important, in many cases, far-reaching, religious leader in the world, on his perspectives about what he saw on his trip to Africa, or what his bishops and others and agencies are hearing in the Western Hemisphere, or the plight of Christians in Africa, but also those in Lebanon, a place that, so of course we're going to engage with them on these things. That was the purpose of our meeting, and in that realm it was very, very productive, and it was a good meeting because we were able to talk about these different areas of the world where they have a presence, where they are engaged, and we are as well, and of course find opportunities to either continue cooperating where that already exists, like in Cuba, or expand our cooperation in other places where it makes sense.
Is it fair to expect a phone call between the President and the Pope anytime soon?
I don't know, maybe. I don't know. I mean, it could happen.
Mr. May I ask you about Iran, if possible? You declared that Operation Epic Fury was over. Now, given all these military actions that we're seeing on the ground, what does over mean militarily?
No. Operation Epic Fury was an offensive operation designed to destroy their missile launches, their Navy, their Air Force, and it achieved that, and their factories, and it achieved that. What you saw yesterday was U.S. destroyers moving through international waters being fired upon by the Iranians, and the U.S. responded defensively to protect itself. That's what you saw. I mean, that's separate and distinct from Operation Epic Fury. If you fire a drone or a missile at our destroyer, what are we supposed to do? Let it hit it? We have to respond to it. We have to knock down the missile, and we have to knock out whatever it is that launched that missile. The alternative is to let it sink one of our ships. That's crazy. So, of course, we responded to it.
Well, yes, but the point is, if there's not much seizing in the firing, because we've
well, you should ask that of the Iranians. Don't ask me. We didn't fire. They fired on us. My point is, if you fire at a U.S. Navy ship, what are we supposed to do? Say, oh, there's a ceasefire. We're not going to shoot down your drone. That's a stupid question. That's a stupid position to take. Of course we fired back at them. They were shooting at us. That's what I would expect to do. Only stupid countries don't shoot back when you're shot at, and we're not a stupid country.
Do you expect that or have you conveyed any red lines to Iran where, if the ceasefire or whatever you call it, if they cross
the red line is clear. If they threaten Americans, they're going to get blown up. I mean, that's how much clearer can you be than that? If you are a missile launching guy, whatever they call that job, and you're sitting there and you fire a missile at the United States and we saw you fire it, we're going to hit you. Of course we are. Who doesn't do that? Unless you want to get your ship sunk. I mean, we're not going to let our ships get sunk by the Iranians with their little, their drones that they're firing. They don't have a navy anymore, but they bring out these little Boston whaler fishing boats and they try to swarm you. We're going to blow those boats up if they're coming towards our boats. I don't know if that's a red line, but I hope they know it is by now. So if I were one of these Iranians on a fast boat and they tell you, hey, your mission is to go after a U.S. destroyer, you're probably not going to survive. I think that's a red line.
Can I
Going back to European reaction,
Does anybody have any other questions? This guy's like a monopoly over here.
Yes. The president has expressed disappointment in support or lack thereof in Europe. Was there any discussion today in your meeting with Prime Minister Meloni or Foreign Minister Tahani about them providing escorts in the Strait of Hormuz?
No, we didn't get to that level of specificity about what they. Here's the bottom line. Okay, everybody says Iran is a threat. Everybody says that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. Okay. But you got to do something about it. The president's trying to do something about it. And I don't understand why anybody would not be supportive of that. And he doesn't understand, and rightfully so, somebody would be supportive of that. But here's a more fundamental problem. Iran now claims that they have a right to control an international waterway. They claim that they have a right to control it. What is the world going to do about that? Is the world going to accept that Iran now controls an international waterway? Because if the world is prepared to accept that, then be ready, because there's like 10 other countries that are going to start doing the same thing in their international waterways, or in international waterways near their countries. That's an unacceptable thing that they're trying to normalize. So if the answer is no, we don't think Iran should be able to control the Straits of Hormuz, then the next question is going to be for everyone, well, what are you going to do about it? What is the world prepared to do about it? And we're trying to do something about it diplomatically. We have a resolution at the United Nations that we're trying to move forward, in which the world and the UN will have an opportunity through the Security Council to vote and say, we are not going to allow them to mine the straits, we're not going to allow them to try to control the straits, and by the way, you have a bunch of humanitarian aid that's trapped inside the Persian Gulf and needs to be released and has not been able to move. We're going to give the world a chance to pronounce itself on it. And if Russia or China or some other country decide to veto it, then you know what the impediment is. But the fundamental question every country, not Italy, every country needs to ask themselves is, are you going to normalize a country claiming to control an international waterway? Because if you normalize that, you've set a precedent that's going to get repeated in a dozen other places. And if the answer is no, we don't want to normalize it, then you better have something more than just strongly worded statements to back it up. And that's the point I've made in all of my visits, not just here. I didn't come to Italy just to make that point. I would say that to any country that complains about the Straits, because that's what we potentially are facing unless we get a good deal from the Iranians, and we're waiting to hear that today.
Mr. Secretary, can I move to Taiwan, actually? Sorry to geographically go around the world. Okay. Parliament just approved a pretty big, massive defense bill today or last night. There was a little bit less than what the president of Taiwan was asking for, but nonetheless, it's a big bill, including money to buy U.S. arms. What is your reaction to that, if any, and specifically in the context of the trip you will be doing with the president next week in China?
Well, all I would say in context of the trip next week in Taiwan in specific is the United States, our policy remains unchanged. You know, we don't want to see any forced or compelled change in the situation now. We think it would be destabilizing to the world. It's our position on that has been, you know, we've heard obviously the Chinese position, but we've made our position on that clear as well. And I imagine that will be discussed in the trip, but I don't think it'll be a feature of our trip, but it'll certainly be an item that's discussed. We think it's to the benefit of China, the United States, and the world writ large that there be stability in the straits there, and that continues to be our position. That's the one we'll continue to stand by and advocate for. All right, I have time for one more. We got to leave.
Ask about Ukraine before you go. Yeah. You spoke with Lavrov recently, and you know they targeted kindergarten in Ukraine even after they advocated for ceasefire. Where does the negotiation
well,
stand?
Right now, the negotiations aren't. We've tried to play a mediator role in that. So far, it has not led to a fruitful outcome for a variety of reasons. We remain prepared to play that role if it can be productive. We don't want to waste our time and invest time and energy into an effort that's not moving forward. But if we see an opportunity to act as a mediator that brings both sides closer to a peace deal, we'd like to see it. Our position at the end of the day is that this war is a tragedy. Both sides are paying a very heavy price for it, both economic and obviously at a human level. It's destructive. We're against it. And anytime you tell me about strikes and people, or every time I hear about these things, it just reminds us of why this war needs to end. And while we're prepared to play whatever role we can to bring it to a peaceful diplomatic resolution, unfortunately, you know, right now those efforts have stagnated, but we always stand ready if those circumstances change.
Can I just
okay,
ask
guys?
One on
yeah,
Africa?
and then I got to go, and I apologize.
One on Africa. I mean, the president committed last year to personally intervening to help try to end the war in Sudan. The Pope, in one of his addresses, called this one of the world's greatest tragedies. Did this come up at all in your discussions, and do you see any movement?
Well, we discussed Africa broadly, and of course Sudan being an incredible tragedy. We've been heavily engaged through that Quad process. Obviously, Sudan has become in some way sort of a proxy engagement between multiple countries who are behind some of the elements that are fighting. There are other countries that are not directly involved but have allowed their national territories to be used as a way to ship weaponry. We recently had a pretty positive announcement for the first time on a statement of principles, but we have to give it some action. What we've really been focused on in Sudan is sort of establishing a humanitarian ceasefire that allows us to provide aid to people that are suffering tremendously there, but not doing so at the expense of a broader deal. So we do want the humanitarian ceasefire where we can identify a number of communities that are safe havens for the distribution of humanitarian aid for what is one of the world's worst humanitarian crises ever. But you can't do that unless you have the security to be able to provide the aid. But we don't want that to be the final outcome. In addition to the humanitarian corridors and the humanitarian sites, we need to bring this conflict to an end. And the way to bring this conflict to an end is for the countries and the parties who are supporting the fighting elements to force these elements toward a peace deal that ends this conflict. And as I said, we've been very involved in that Quad process, invested a lot of time in it, continue to be engaged on a daily basis, and in fact have people in our bureau in Africa, as well as our special envoy, Saad Boulos, involved almost daily on this topic. So, okay guys, I got to run. I apologize.
Were you
Thank
surprised by your Italian origins? Mr. Secretary, were you surprised by your Italian origins?
Well, not surprised today.
Well,
I learned about it in 2017 when PBS did a Finding Your Roots special.
Oh, okay.
That's where I found it.
Okay.
How about the 2028 buzz?
अमरीकी वज़ीर ख़ारिजा मार्को रूबियो गुफ्तगू कर रहे थे। उनकी जानिब से कहा गया कि ईरान के जवाब के हम मुंतज़िर हैं, हमें आज ईरान का जवाब मौसूल होना चाहिए। उम्मीद है कि ईरान की जानिब से हमें जो जवाब आज मौसूल होगा वो संजीदा जवाब आएगा। उन्होंने ये भी कहा कि आबना हुमस में हमारे जहाज़ों पर फायरिंग की गई और हमने पहल नहीं की बल्कि ईरान ने इसमें पहल की थी। हमने इसका भरपूर जवाब दिया। ईरान की नेवी तबाह हो चुकी, लेकिन उसके बावजूद ईरान की जानिब से ये हरकतें जारी हैं। आबना हुमस पर ईरान को कंट्रोल करने की हम इजाज़त नहीं देंगे। मार्को रूबियो की जानिब से ये भी कहा गया। उन्होंने कहा कि अमेरिका पर मिसाइल फायर किए गए तो हम उसका जवाब देंगे। मार्को रूबियो की जानिब से क्लियर किया गया। उन्होंने कहा कि ईरान के साथ गुज़िश्ता रोज़ होने वाला तसादुम एक दिफाई कार्रवाई थी। अमरीकी वज़ीर ख़ारिजा जो कि मीडिया नुमाइंदों से गुफ्तगू कर रहे थे, उनकी जानिब से सवालों के जवाब दिए गए। उनकी जानिब से भी कहा गया कि ईरान ने फायरिंग में पहल की, हमने इसका जवाब दिया था।